Clothing. This was a big variable. So this changed multiple times based on weather. I started in February, so I had some heavy clothing to protect me from the cold. During the day, I would wear, let's go from the feet up. I would wear my Injinji toe liners with, so I would wear the Injinji toe liners with farm to feet socks. These were cool. They had the little AT thing on them. I liked these the best. I tried Smart Wool for day hiking with my Injinjis, and I also tried Darn Tough. I ended up liking farm to feet the best. Everybody's different. Try out what works for you, but with the toe liners, these seem to be the most comfortable combination for me. So for socks, I had what I would hike in. I had a spare pair of my socks. So I had another pair of farm to feet. So I'd have these, then I'd have an extra dry pair, and then I have my sleep socks. So we'll talk about my sleep system next after we do this. But this was what I had for my feet. Then I had these pants that I bought at REI. They're a medium weight pant, and they were awesome. They were comfortable, and they had a lot of zipper pockets, and they were water resistant, which was important to me because I wanted to have something that if the weather was off and on drizzly or if it was snowing out, I didn't necessarily have to put on all my rain gear, but that I would have some water protection with these. They were really good. They had a lot of stretch where I needed it. They had this extra material in the knees. They were great for hiking. I did talk about these in an earlier video where I gave the exact information on these pants, but these were fantastic. I used these to hike almost the entire winter. Once I stopped using these, I actually went to this parachute pant that I got at REI that was an REI pant. These were a more lightweight option. Again, they had some water resistance, but they had a lot of zipper pockets. They were nice and baggy. They were comfortable. And so I had these that I used later. I did not have both at the same time. So those were what I used for bottoms. Then when I get to the White Mountains, I switched out to these Smart Wool leggings. These are what I use for winter hiking when in the whites normally. And so this is what I used up here because I was worried about cold and wind. So that's what I had. These were the different bottoms that I used. All had different times when they were functional. And then at one point, I ended up pretty early on. Whenever it was over 50 degrees, I wore my Nike running shorts. These were great. I didn't chafe. They were comfortable. They dried fast. So that's what I had for bottoms. I also, when I got to New Hampshire, ended up buying, I wanted to try these Smart Wool shorts out because the liner is Smart Wool. And one thing I found that with my running clothes that were synthetic, anything that wasn't wool, it smelled really bad really quick and it held the stink. The Smart Wool stuff didn't smell nearly as bad and it didn't hold the stink. So I highly recommend any merino wool product for through hiking. It doesn't dry as fast as your synthetics will. It doesn't hold the odor and it feels good against your skin, and it's just it's great even when it gets wet. It feels good. So I had these. I liked these. I didn't end up using them as much as my running shorts, and the only reason really was because they were a little too short for me. And so I just felt a little goofy. Also, when the liner in these got wet, it got like heavier and saggier, so it felt like this big loose thing. And unlike my running shorts, I didn't like it. So I didn't wear them as much. The other sock option I had were sealskin socks. I thought I would use these. I didn't. Didn't need them, didn't use them. So for my hands, I had 2 pairs of these liners. They're just, I think these are EMS polyester or whatever liners. I run with these, I hike with these in the winter as my liners. But then I bought these at REI. They're Gore-Tex Burton. They're basically ski gloves. These were amazing. They have this little felt thing here so you can wipe your runny nose on it. They had a little pocket, which I never used. You could cinch it a little tighter here in the wrist and here up further if you wanted. I probably used these 5 days, but those 5 days I used them were the 5 days I needed them. This I could put my hand warmers in and keep my hands warm. We had extremely cold weather in the Roan Mountain area, and we were hiking during the day. It was probably, there were some days where the wind chill was below 0, and these were amazing to have. I also used these in the White Mountains for a section, and then I sent them home. The other thing I had for my hands, so I had 2 of these. I had these that ended up going home once the weather got better. I think I sent these home in Damascus maybe, and my other pair of these liners. The other thing I had that I kept for quite a while were these Z-Packs possum gloves. These were my sleep gloves. So again, I'll talk about my whole sleep system, but these were what I used to sleep in at night when it was cold. They were huge. The other thing I had was a buff. Everybody's got these. Some people use them as hats, whatever. I had this. I didn't use it as much as I thought I would. So for my top, I had a Smart Wool bra. Now I went with this for a couple reasons. The biggest one was because the Trek every year does a survey of clothing and gear and everything. This was like the most popular, high-rated sort of sport bra that women used hiking the AT. And I have to say that this was amazing. I loved it. The only downside to this was that it took a long time to dry because it's kind of thick. But I loved it. It was a little bit like, it wasn't, I mean, it came with big pads that I didn't take with me. I left them home. But it was a good bra. I used it the entire trip. At one point I had 2 of them and I realized that I really didn't need to. So I had that. That was wonderful. And for my shirt, again, when I started in February, I wore this Smart Wool base layer top. I wore this every day. And I wore it over a Smart Wool t-shirt. So for my top, I'd have the bra, I'd have my black Smart Wool t-shirt, and then I'd have this red base layer over it. And then depending on the weather, I would also be wearing one thing over that. I started with this Smart Wool hoodie because it had this, it was almost like a balaclava type of hood on it, and it was water resistant. And I loved that it had like zipper pockets if I needed them. So this is what I would wear on my top when I first started hiking the AT. What I soon found out was that I wasn't really wearing this much. I only wore this on very cold days because this was warm enough for me once you're hiking. So I ended up sending this home and had Jim get this for me, which is a Smart Wool zip up. Again, I found that I really wasn't needing that added layer, but I also didn't want to not have it. Oh, sorry, this is an icebreaker. This is not Smart Wool. But again, a lot of my stuff is merino. You can see that I really leaned into the merino wool products. So I had this for a while, ended up sending that home. And I sent this home because then I replaced both of these items with an alpaca. So then when I got this replaced the 2 items, and this was awesome. Even when it was wet, it was warm. And I was able to use this for all of the things, and it kept me plenty warm in the cold. So this replaced 2 items. I got this in Irwin, Tennessee during the very cold spell. So that's what I have for my tops. And then later on in the hike, all I wore with my running shorts was my sports bra and either this Smart Wool t-shirt or this Smart Wool t-shirt. There was a while where I had this North Face t-shirt down in Virginia, and this got so smelly that, and even though it was like, it's like weighs nothing, I didn't need 3 t-shirts. And I decided to just keep the 2. One became a sleep t-shirt and the other one became my hiking t-shirt, and I would interchange them weekly when I did laundry. And I did send this home because it smelled so bad. The merino wool is incredible when it comes to stink. And you can smell it on other people too. Let's talk about rain gear. This was the most frustrating piece of gear, I think, that I encountered with anything. I did a tremendous amount of research. And again, my goal being keep things as lightweight as possible. My research led me to Z-Packs. I bought the pants and I bought the jacket. So oftentimes I would wear my jacket with any of those tops to give me added warmth during the day while I was hiking. So this was more of sort of a windbreaker for me to start. And then what I soon found out when I was going into the Smokies, it was pouring rain. I was wearing all my rain gear. What I soon found out was, first, the seam seal tape, which is it's actually happening again in these pants, started to delaminate. So I contacted Z-Packs and they immediately sent me a replacement pair. This is the replacement pair. The other thing, because it's so lightweight, there's no durability. And that's not on Z-Packs. That's the way it goes. The more lightweight you want things, like with my Uber Light Air mattress. It's lightweight. It's not as durable. It got a hole in it, whatever. These things ripped. I would get them stuck on a branch. There's stuff across the trail all over the place. You get your legs stuck on things. You're walking. You're going at a good pace. Things rip. So my pants got all ripped. And they wetted out. So did the jacket. Over and over and over and over again. But it's not just the Z-Packs. It's everything. I don't know that there's a brand out there that doesn't wet through after a certain amount of rain. These were maybe a half hour and I was drenched all the way through. The other thing too is you're sweating when you're hiking. So you're also getting wet on the inside because of your body temperature. And then if you've got your pit zips open, there's water coming in through there. So it's like kind of like a losing proposition. When you hike in the rain, you're going to get wet. The key is don't get cold. So figure out a rain system that's going to work for you to keep you from getting cold, because chances are you will get wet no matter what. Maybe don't spend a ton of money on the rain gear. Maybe get the frog togs. I don't know. After, these were just not working for me. And when we got closer to the whites, I needed more wind protection. So I had Jim switch out with some of my existing hiking gear that I had back home. Even though I knew, so I had this North Face jacket. I've been hiking in this jacket for probably 8 years. It wets out. It's no longer a good rain jacket, which is why I bought the Z-Packs, because I was like, this isn't going to work because it's no longer waterproof. So I got the Z-Packs. Well, the nice thing about this is it's a lot thicker, so you get a lot more wind protection. I thought this is what I was going to need in the White Mountains in rain and wind when you are above tree line. So I knew I would still get wet, but I wanted the wind protection. So I swapped it out with this. I ended up completing my hike with this. It's in my summit photo. For my bottoms, I have these Gore-Tex Marmot pants. These are what I use for winter hiking in the whites again. I swapped these out. These were better with water. Like, I don't remember getting as wet with these pants, probably because they're Gore-Tex. I still sweat in them. But like, I remember walking through like rivers and everything with these, and like the water would get in, but you could tell it was coming up through the bottom and not through the pants. So these were really good. I think that these were probably one of the best pieces of rain gear that I have. All right, sleep system. So in the winter, I wanted to make sure that in my sleeping bag, I had the right clothing. All my research indicated that having merino wool base layers was the best way to go on your body. Don't wear a ton of layers, because then your sleeping bag is not going to be able to reach your body to warm you up. So I went with these Smart Wool merino wool base layer bottoms, which, by the way, I had for my entire through hike. These were something that I had from day 1 to day 154 and were used on a regular basis. These were amazing. So my sleep system was that in the winter with these tall Smart Wool socks. Then I had this merino wool Smart Wool base layer top. This is what I slept in every night. These were my dry clothes. These never got wet. I would use these Z-Packs possum gloves to keep my hands warm. And believe me, in February, March, and April, you need them. Then I would have this fleece lined neck buff. And the reason I wanted it fleece lined is because this would go on my neck and I would pull it up to my nose. Because remember, my sleeping bag stopped here. So you need a way to keep your face warm because it was freezing. So I would wear this up to my nose, and then I would wear this wool hat over my eyes to my nose. So my face was entirely covered by these two items, and they were great. When it got a little cooler out, I switched to or a little warmer out, I switched to using this buff at night if I needed it. And I bought this in Irwin with my alpaca. I got an alpaca hat. So I started using this. This I used through my entire through hike. This was great at night, especially if it rained all day and my baseball hat was wet. I would take off my wet baseball hat and put this on, and it just made me feel comfortable and warm. So this was great. As it got warm out, my sleep system, so for underwear, I had two different types of underwear. I had just a plain merino Smart Wool underwear because, again, stink. If there's something that's going to stink, it's your underwear. And these were great. They kept that at a minimum. I also ended up getting a second pair. I ended up getting a pair of marmots. And these are synthetic. And so they were kind of icky. So I sent them home and I just used the one pair of the Smart Wool merino. I had the alpaca hat later on for day and night, but then I had this Smart Wool hat for during the day also. This was good because it was long. It could cover my ears, and I could interchange them for sleeping or not. If I wanted to use one, like if I wanted to use this during the day, for some reason, I'd leave the other one and keep it in my bag and keep it dry for nighttime. The other thing I had were the Dirty Girl gaiters. Picked these up in Hot Springs. Didn't really need them before that point in time, so they lasted my whole hike. I also switched later in my hike. The Injinji liners I'd been using would get holes in them a lot. They just broke down really quick. I got the medium weight hiking ones. I got these actually at Shaw's in Monson. Again, Poets Gear Emporium had amazing selection of everything. So I got these there because I wanted to make sure that I had good socks for the rest of my hike. And I was using those with my running compression socks because of my shin splints. So I had these on for most of my hike after I got out of probably Pennsylvania. They were socks, but they started getting so many holes in them that I just cut them and just used them as sort of sleeves on my calves. These were amazing. I didn't get shin splints again on my hike. The last piece of gear, again, I stored it in this Hyperlite bag, was my Puffy. This was awesome. This I never hiked in. This is something that you keep dry always. So it's like your sleep clothes. You always keep them dry. You always keep your Puffy dry. This is what you put on you whenever you stop and when it's cold, because it will warm you immediately. And this is something that everybody had on at the end of the day at camp. They'd put on their Puffies. That's what you cooked in. It's what you walked around in to set up your tent. It's what you did all of that stuff in. Or like I said, if you stopped for lunch and you're getting cold, this is what would come on. So this was one of the most lightweight pieces of gear. This stayed with me from the beginning till the end, and I used it the entire time. I literally was wearing this my last night in Baxter State Park at the shelter in the Birches tent site. This thing was amazing. It is a Mountain Hardwear. Yeah, it's a Mountain Hardwear Puffy, and it has a hood. It's got pockets. Again, though, just something to keep in mind, with lightweight comes less durability. And one day I leaned over my stove and it literally melted this one little section of my Puffy, but I put a piece of duct tape on it. This was early on and it was fine. I've even washed it with that duct tape on. So I think that about concludes my gear.